Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, the 6th day of August 2014. This is show number 1019. My name is Shawn King. I'm your host for this evening. Thank you guys very much for joining us, whether you're listening to the archive or whether you're tuned in live to the show at yourmaclifeshow.com. As always, we encourage you guys to go to the website at yourmaclifeshow.com. You can, all the archives are up there, or you can subscribe to the show via iTunes. The best way to do it, it's what everyone does, is subscribes to it via iTunes. We have the IRC chat room is open. As I was saying earlier, if you are watching the Google Hangouts and want to join the IRC, it's real easy. Just go to the website at yourmaclifeshow.com, and right there below the video window is our friend Monty has set it up so that you can very easily join us in the IRC chat room. You'll see a thing, the box says connect to Your Mac Life IRC. Just put a nickname in there and it drops you in IRC. You don't have to know anything about IRC. It's dead simple to do. And you don't have to participate in IRC. You just can read what the other folks say. They're nice. They'll be nice to you. And Sly is our IRC babe, and she's the cop in there and won't let anyone be mean to you. So don't worry about IRC. Please join us in the IRC. Or you can do the Google Hangout thing, although I can't really pay a lot of attention to the Google Hangouts because there's so much other stuff going on. Speaking of stuff going on, we're going to be talking to our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com tonight. I'm going to ask him the one question that is on everyone's mind. The folks at Recode posted yesterday that Apple was going to have their fall, late summer, special event, undoubtedly announcing the new version of the iPhone, on September 9th. Now, that story was not corroborated by anybody. No one else has corroborated that story, except Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg, both the people familiar with this. Yeah, no, that's not corroboration. That's just either you're making crap up or whatever. Everyone's waiting for Jim Dalrymple to say yep or nope. So I will ask him on tonight's show. Little hint, he won't answer. I'm just going to tell you right now, he's not going to answer. But I still have to ask him. I still absolutely have to ask him. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about other things with Jim. We're also going to be talking to Epson's Eddie Murphy. He is their printer guru evangelist, a guy who knows all things about printing from Epson's. If you talk to any professional photographer, and I have many, many times over the years, especially in the last, I want to say at least 5 years, you ask them what they print on, they all print on Epson's. Every pro I have spoken to prints on an Epson printer. And why? We'll ask Eddie about that. But as I've proven with the photos behind me, they're the best ones out there right now. You're not going to get a better photo printer than an Epson inkjet. We'll talk to Eddie about that. If you have any questions for Eddie, as always, send your questions to onair at yourmaclifeshow.com. We're also going to talk a little bit about, a little later on the show in our Starting Point Photography segment, monkeys taking selfies. Have you heard about this story? This is really interesting. Apparently some guy was taking monkey pictures. The monkey got a hold of one of his cameras. The monkey took a selfie. Wikipedia posted the monkey picture as Creative Commons, no copyright on it. And the guy's up in arms over the fact that, no, he has the copyright on it. The thing is, and we'll talk about this later, who owns the copyright on the monkey selfie? It's really kind of interesting, especially if you're a photographer, especially if you're thinking about being a photographer. It's an interesting story. We're also got a copy of MacFun's new, MacFun.com, their new app called Tonality. Really, really cool software. As folks know, I'm a big fan of the MacFun software in general, all their stuff. But you also know I'm also a fan of black and white, especially printed black and white. So this is kind of a neat juxtaposition with Eddie Murphy from Epson and MacFun's Tonality. This is a new piece of software from MacFun that you can't just make a color photo black and white. You think you can in iPhoto and even Lightroom. You've got to tweak it. You've got to be able to find a way to bring out the beauty in a black and white image. And some images just are gorgeous in black and white. Not all of them, but some are beautiful in black and white. You can get a trial version of MacFun's Tonality on their website at macfun.com, MacPhun, not Fun, but Phun. Download the trial software and play around with it. But you can also win a copy on this here show. Later on in the show, we're going to give away a copy of MacFun's Tonality. All you have to do is be have an entry form into the contest, the virtual hat, into our Friends of Your Mac Life contest. Go to the website, yourmaclifeshow.com. Fill out the form at the top of the page. It says Friends of Your Mac Life right there at the top of the page. Fill that form out. It sends me an email. I drop your email into the virtual hat, and I draw the names from that later on the show. The thing is, though, you have to do it each and every month if you're not a subscriber. If you're a subscriber, A, I like you more. That just goes without saying. But B, I also do the virtual hat thing on your behalf. And as a subscriber, you get additional entry forms. So say, for example, you subscribe for $2 a month, you get one. If you subscribe for $4 a month, you get two. So for every $2 you subscribe to Your Mac Life, you get an extra entry form. It's a little bit encouragement for folks to subscribe to Your Mac Life. And I love all of our subscribers. Thank you guys very much for doing that. What else we got going on tonight? This is one of those stories that you just don't understand how they can happen. Push for pizza is yo for food delivery. Now, have you heard about this? These, I think they're kids. I think the video is the actual developers. It's a single button app that once you set it up, you push the button, and it orders you pizza. Okay, now initially it sounds like a cool idea, until first of all you have to think to yourself, how effing lazy are you? Actually, in the video, the kid in the video say, I want pizza, but I don't want to order pizza. You lazy son of a bitch! How hard is it to order pizza? You pick up the phone, you dial pizza. You tell them what you want, they send it to you. It's not hard. It's not strenuous. You can do it online. You can set it up at Pizza Hut or Domino's or whatever it might be to have them almost literally a one-click thing and they'll send you pizza. You don't need this stupid app. Because the other problem with the app is that it's limited to the number of pizza places that it can do. It can only order you a cheese pizza or a pepperoni pizza. I don't know about you guys, but a plain cheese pizza? That to me seems boring. And just a straight up pepperoni pizza? No, I want like mushrooms and stuff in my pizza. The other thing is too, is one of the first things I do when I move to a new location is order pizza from the local places to see who makes the best pizza. You know, it could be John's Pizza or Frank's Pizza down the road, or not always Domino's or Pizza Hut or, you know, Papa John's, the ones that we think are the best. And I've actually had it so that in some places, Papa John's is awful. Like when we were in Connecticut, Papa John's pizza was terrible. In Portland, delicious. Great pizza. So there's different pizza joints in your area. This is another example of one of those apps that you wonder, how the hell do people make money off of this? How do venture capitalists go, yeah, let's give this guy $10 million. Darxmax said on Twitter, nowadays all you have to do is have a stupid idea and you can get venture capital money. And I was like, I've got a million stupid ideas every day. Why can't I get some? Why can't I get some of that money? I'm just chock full of stupid ideas. You want stupid ideas? I'm your boy. I'm the guy that you should come to if you want stupid ideas. For me, that stupid ideas rock for me. So yeah, this is another one of those apps that just pissed me off that not that someone thought it up, but that someone can get millions of dollars in venture capital money to develop it and announce it and market it and all that kind of stuff. And it's a dumb idea. Again, how lazy are you that you can't order pizza either online or on the phone? Monty says, how do I verify that I'm in said virtual hat just in case I'd want to check up on Shawn and see if he's doing his job? You can't. Simple as that. You cannot. You're out of luck. Now, if you're a subscriber, I get an email every month that says you have subscribed for X number of dollars. And what I do is I duplicate that email. So if it's a $2 subscription, I put it in the virtual hat. If it's a $4 subscription, I duplicate it, I make a copy of it, and put those two in the virtual hat. Otherwise, the emails, if you fill out the email form on the website, it sends me an email and it automatically goes in the virtual. I don't even see the email. It automatically goes in the virtual hat. I've got a filter or rule set up in Mail that sends it straight to that folder. So yeah, you can be guaranteed that if you're a subscriber or a contest entry form, you will get into our contest. Later on the show, we'll be talking to our good friend, we're going to be talking to Eddie Murphy from Epson, talking about printing. If you have any questions for Eddie about printing, send them off to me at onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. We're also going to be talking about monkeys taking selfies, but up next, we're going to talk to a good friend, Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. This is Your Mac Life. You want to do me a favor and on Twitter kick Jim Dalrymple because he's not answering his damn phone. God. I'm Shawn King. This is Your Mac Life. This is the Your Mac Life show for August the 6th, show number 1019. We're going to move on from Jim. But yeah, if someone would ask Jim to just turn his phone on or do whatever it is he's got to do. One of the stories I saw this past week that I thought was interesting, I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. For you folks who use Gmail, now I don't use Gmail for anything except either spam email or not private email. I wouldn't say private email, but for emails I don't really care about. I've got my Gmail account is only checked, my email on Gmail is only checked on my iPhone. So if I need something on my iPhone account or by email on the iPhone, I use the Gmail address. My Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com address gets way too much mail for me to be able to do that. I'm going to sneeze in a second, so bear with me. So I don't do any other I don't do any other email on my iPhone. So I saw this story on The Verge. Google scans everyone's email for child porn, and it got this guy arrested. Now, I am not ever in any way, shape, or form going to defend somebody creating, in any way, shape, or form, dealing in child pornography. Do not get me wrong on that story. If you are that person, then you should, I can't say it because Logan's in our IRC chat room, but you all know how I feel about this kind of thing. But how do you feel about Google, or anyone for that matter, scanning all of your emails, finding naughty things, bad things, illegal things, whatever it might be, and then reporting that activity to the authorities? Yes, I understand that Google already scans your email. That's one of the reasons and one of the ways they can send you advertisements via the Gmail interface. So they're already doing that in an automated kind of way. Is it bothersome to anybody that they're doing this and then actively reporting on what's in your email to various authorities? It's a little troublesome to me. I understand why they're doing it, and I laud them for doing whatever they can when it comes to child pornography. But what happens if you're doing something that's slightly illegal? You send a friend a link to a BitTorrent site. You're not downloading the BitTorrent thing yourself. You just told a friend, hey, here's a link for you. BitTorrent, and it's a link to the Expendables. The Expendables 3 is all over every BitTorrent site in the world. It got leaked a long time ago. I'm not watching it. Even if I wanted to download it, I ain't watching that piece of crap. So you sent someone a link to a BitTorrent file. That could be considered suspicious, if not downright illegal. Probably not. You send someone an email saying that you plan on robbing this bank. Does Google have the obligation to report that to the authorities? It's a slippery slope. It's one we have to be very careful about going down. It's one that I think Google should be a lot more open about what they do, how they do it, and why they do it, and in what situations they do it. It's kind of bothersome. Anytime you have any... Now, I'm also not that person who thinks that email is secure or safe. No, it's not. I've known from the beginning. I used to work at an ISP here in Vancouver. Your email, when you send it and receive it, goes through any number of email servers. At any point in time, anybody who has control of that email server could dip into the server and randomly read any emails they wanted to. They could set up a filter on that server so that every email that you send gets duplicated to my email box. So it's not really all that secure. That being said, it's still, we don't think about this very much. We don't think about the fact that our email is open to any number of prying eyes along the way. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be careful when you do your legal stuff. There's all kinds of ways, PGP and things like that, to protect yourself. But still, it is a little worrisome that anybody can report on your activities via this methodology. There was a story on, was it 9 to 5? I think it was 9 to 5 Mac with regards to Microsoft. Microsoft apparently is planning as the children at 9 to 5 Mac, air quotes, report, Microsoft wants to make a splash near Apple's iconic Fifth Avenue Cube. Okay, now, Microsoft opening up retail stores near an Apple store is not news. Microsoft's been doing that for, I want to say, at least 5 years, at least 3 years, maybe as long as 5 years. So that's not news. Opening up near the Apple retail store on Fifth Avenue? Okay. Go for it, Microsoft. You can open up a store wherever you want. And it will, depending on Microsoft's goals, it may be a success. It will not be as successful as the Apple Store. There is, I would say, 99% of the people who go into the Apple Store are not going to go into the Microsoft Store. That's not a place you comparison shop. You're not going to go into the Apple Store and play around with an iPad Air and then go into the Microsoft Store and play around with a Surface tablet. Sly says that Jim is there. Hey, folks, let me just give Jim a call. I'm going to put on some music again for just a second, so bear with me. Welcome back, folks. I'm on the phone now with our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Shawn. How are you?
I am good. Sorry, I didn't catch you before. You said you were in an area that didn't have cell service. It happens. Not a big deal. Now, there's only one question that the entire Macintosh community wants to know the answer to. And I know...
And I'm not answering that question for you.
Well, no, hang on now, wait a second now. Hang on. My first question to you, and I just want a yep or nope from you, okay? Do you like lobster?
Nope.
Okay. My second question to you is, do you like Heineken?
Yep.
Okay. So now
what
I'm going to do now is I'm going to splice that yep and nope into the answer of this other question. I got you.
Okay.
I got you. I nailed you. Ha ha. I own you now, baby. Recode yesterday. I can't even say scoop because there's been no confirmation. But Recode reported yesterday, John Paskowski, that Apple is going to have a special event on September 9th this year, which we're all going to assume Apple is going to announce the new version of the iPhone. Everyone, and I hope this chaps Recode's ass. Everyone's sitting around waiting for you to say yep or no. That's going to be a big old power trip for you, doesn't it? You're just jerking Recode around now, aren't you?
It feels kind of good. I can't say it does.
Okay, now you said you're not going to answer the question. That's fine. Why are you not ready to answer the question? Do you not know the answer to the question? Why won't you answer the question?
I'm not even going to answer that.
I'm trying. I'm doing my best over here, okay? I'm doing what I can with what little I got.
Yeah, you did a good job. That was a good try.
It's what I got to do. But yeah, I tweeted that yesterday. I said it's got to chap Recode's ass that everyone's sitting around waiting for Jim to say yep or nope on this one.
I saw that tweet.
That was just very, very funny. But it's legitimate too because no one else has corroborated this. Normally by this time, email this isn't directed to Jim, folks, but this is to the audience. Normally by now, Apple would have sent out, if the story was true, would have sent out invites, and you would have seen the usual media sources saying, "Hey, I got my invite. Here it is, and let's approve of this thing." So Apple has not confirmed this to anyone by sending out those invites. No one else has confirmed it either. Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg both said, our sources tell us, well, your sources are as suspect as, frankly, Recode's are, because nobody else has confirmed this. Stories, according to good journalism, folks, stories should have two confirmations. It can't just be one guy saying, oh, yeah, we're doing this. You have to have what they call double confirmation. And no one's got the double confirmation yet, which is why everyone's waiting for Jim to confirm or deny the story. So, but we'll move on from there because Jim's going to be a dick and not answer it. So, yeah, you could have given me a scoop. You could have thrown a bone my way. It could have been.
I could have.
It could have been all over the news tomorrow on Your Mac Life. Jim Dalrymple says, yep, nope to the question. You could help me out here.
I could have, but I'm too much of a bastard for that. So.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Let's move on then. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but this story, I was just talking about it before you came on the air. Microsoft wants to make a retail splash near Apple's iconic Fifth Avenue Cube store. Is that the worst way of writing that story ever?
Well, any story that has Microsoft and the retail splash is going to be a horrible, horrible thing. Microsoft has tried this strategy of going into Apple areas
yep.
where Apple has put their stores and have tried to make a splash. Mm-hmm. And they're dismal failures. Yep. And I've been to a couple of them in Silicon Valley. Yep. Stanford Mall, they've done it there. And I walked by the Microsoft store, and it's empty.
Yeah.
And I walked by the Apple store, and it's packed.
Yep.
So, and it's not just one store. Every place that I go that has a Microsoft and Apple store,
yep.
Valley Fair Mall in San Jose, same thing. I mean, I know now why people take pictures and send them to me of an empty Microsoft store and a full Apple store right across from it.
Yep.
Because it is amazing when you walk in and see there are people shopping.
Yes.
A lot of people shopping in these places because these are high-end malls.
Yep.
So, people have a lot of money. It's just that nobody's shopping at the Microsoft store.
That's right.
I mean,
and
it's like going to a Mercedes dealer and across the street is a junkyard. Nobody's at the junkyard shopping, but everybody's at the Mercedes dealer.
There was a quote, I think it was on, I think it was CNET. Microsoft on Fifth Avenue, just a few blocks from Apple, would be very dramatic. And I tweeted, no, it really won't be very dramatic at all.
No.
That's
not going to be dramatic.
There will be no drama there at all, if only because, if they had written this story 5 years ago when the first Microsoft store opened, maybe that would be dramatic. We weren't 100% sure at the time. But now, after what you've told us, what I've seen myself, what everyone else has shown us, there's no drama there whatsoever. Microsoft is continually, I think, embarrassing themselves by doing this because of those easy comparisons. Walt Mossberg last week was in the Mall of America, and he was in the Mall of America in Minneapolis. The Apple store, the Microsoft store, is directly across from the Apple store. So it's easy to compare them. And it was the same thing we always see. 20 Microsoft Store employees and 2 customers, and the Apple Store is packed full.
And I think that you made a good point there in saying that it's an easy comparison. And Microsoft has made it an easy comparison because they model their stores exactly the same way that Apple does. And, their shirts are even blue. I mean, come on. At least do something different. Try. Of course, they did try something different with the Surface, and it sucks balls. So.
That's right. Monty in our IRC chat room says, it's sad how much it looks like Microsoft tried to copy the look and feel of the Apple Store. They seem to have shopped for furnishings for the store in the Apple Used Retail Fixtures Warehouse Clearance Center.
Yeah. Well, what these people, Samsung included with their retail stores, what they don't understand is that it's not just the blue shirts that sell Apple products. It's the products themselves. So instead of opening up retail stores to sell shit, concentrate your efforts on making some good products, and then you might have something.
Maybe.
And as funny as that is, it's the truth.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. I mean, if you have bad products, you're not going to be able to sell them regardless of if you copy Apple's marketing strategy or not.
Yep.
And the fact is they're not copying the important parts of Apple's marketing strategy. They're copying the colors of the shirts and the texture of the tables.
And the reason
good luck to you.
And the reason why they're doing that is because we've been saying for 20 years, it's because these companies don't understand why people like you, me, everyone in our audience buys Apple products. They seem to think it's because the stores are pretty, or because the people have got blue shirts on, or because they're nice to us. So, hey, let's copy that stuff. They fundamentally misunderstand the Apple customer. They have no clue why people buy Apple products. Well,
and there's one more aspect to this, too. I can walk into any Apple store, no matter how busy they are, around the world. I've done it in Europe. I've done it in North America. I can walk in and walk out in 5 minutes and have everything that I need and be done.
Yep.
As much as it is a retail store and I am out shopping, I do not like to shop.
That's right.
I like to walk, pick up my thing and leave.
Yep.
And when I can do that, I'm very happy.
Yep. Speaking of very happy and or very unhappy, I posted this story up on The Loop at loopinsight.com, folks. It's an interesting question. I got a lot of interesting responses on The Loop. Who should decide if cell phone calls are allowed on flights? There's the story up on Loop Insight is talking about how the government is thinking about just doing an outright ban on cell phones. The FAA has said they're going to, at some point in the very near future, lift the restriction on cell phones, because they're saying cell phones will not cause the plane to crash. The FAA isn't saying go ahead and make calls. They're saying we're not going to ban them because they can interfere with the plane's flight. Now, some folks want to say, hey, let the airlines decide. We don't want more government interference. Let the airlines decide on a case-by-case basis, and therefore the market will decide whether they want this kind of thing. Or the other aspect of it is, being Canadian and being socialist, communist. I say, yes, get the frickin' government involved and ban cell phone calls on flights. Where do you stand on this, Jim?
Well, I think that if you're on a flight and you're talking on your cell phone, interrupting the rest of the passengers, the biggest guy on the plane should punch you in the face.
I volunteer! Me! Pick me!
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'll volunteer to be that guy on any flight that I'm on. Because I'm not going to sit next to a guy because people's voices get louder as they talk on a cell phone, especially if they're trying to impress you. So yeah, I'll be that guy.
And one of the things that one of the Loop commenters said was that how is it any different if you're on a plane and the two people next to you are having a conversation, and you can still hear that? Well, it's different because it's been proven scientifically that hearing a one-sided conversation is much more distracting, annoying, and distressing than hearing both sides of that conversation. For whatever reason, our brains can tune out both sides of the conversation much easier because we're hearing one side and our brains are automatically trying to figure out what the other half of that conversation is. And we'll make things up and we'll extrapolate and we'll try to figure it out. That's why one-sided cell phone calls, no matter where you are, whether you're on a plane or a train or a bus or in a car, one-sided cell phone conversations are so much more annoying than two-sided conversations between two people sitting next to you.
And I don't mind looking over to the guy next to me and saying, hey, keep it down.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. Mesquite?
And, if he wants to say something from there, fine. But,
yeah,
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, we can have that follow-on conversation if you'd like. I'm going to be perfectly pleasant at the beginning and ask you, please, sir, would you mind? I'll be very, very kind and low level. But if you want to continue the conversation afterward, then it might get ugly.
Yeah. And I think that's very fair.
Yeah.
I think if you listen to, you could say, well, you could do the same thing with a person talking on a cell phone, could you keep it down? But the fact is, if you go to a mall or a restaurant and listen to two people talking, they're usually talking at a very reasonable level and everything is copacetic. But one of those people gets a phone call and their voice raises, 10 decibels. And it's like they're almost screaming. So it does make a difference. And you could just take the cell phone, turn it off, and put it in your pocket. Say, I'll give this back to you when we land.
You can learn to be an adult about it. The other issue, the other thing that some folks on the Loop were talking about was that, well, just bring earphones and plug them in. It's like, no, why should I have to make up for your lack of common courtesy and etiquette? And that's going to be the problem. If you allow the airlines to decide this, some will say yes, some will say no. The problem is we don't base our airplane tickets on whether or not the what kind of plane it is or that kind of stuff. 95% of us buy our airline tickets based on price and price alone. So if Delta says they allow calls and American says they don't, but the flight is cheaper on Delta, I'm going to fly Delta.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be sitting next to someone who's going to be... And the other issue, too, is that it's different. Someone said, well, what about when you're on the bus or that kind of stuff? Well, the bus, you're not on a bus any longer than, say, 30 minutes, 45 minutes maximum. If you're on a transcontinental flight overnight, you're on the red eye from Vancouver to frickin' Halifax, that's an 8-hour flight. At some point, I'm going to jam that phone up your ass if you're on it for more than 10 minutes. I guarantee you. What are they going to do, throw me off the plane?
And I may take my phone and jam it up your ass too, just for kicks after that.
Just for stereo calls. Here you go. Yeah, that will just be incredibly unpleasant, and I will get just as unpleasant to someone who does something like that.
It's unpleasant enough traveling these days.
Yep.
I don't think that we need that. I've talked to people that use that travel time to actually relax.
Sure, yeah.
They don't turn on their computers. They don't turn on iPhones or anything like that. They listen to music and they just relax.
Yep.
And I think that's great.
The other thing I've always said is that if you are so freaking self-important that you can't not be on a phone for the period of time of the flight, stay in the office. Stay in the airport.
Or take a private jet.
Exactly. Take a private jet. Do something. Like you said, it's already inconvenient and stressful enough to fly. There's no need for anyone, the government or the airlines or the FAA, to make this even more stressful.
No, I agree.
When was the last time, Jim, can you even remember, when was the last time of your first day at work, at a physical work location? Do you remember?
Oh, my God.
I know. I was thinking about this when I was talking about this story. I can't remember. It was like more than 25 years ago for me.
Yeah.
The best tweet I saw in the past week was from a guy, and most folks might not know his name, Musa Tariq. Does that name ring a bell to anybody? Musa Tariq's tweet was, "First day of school. I hope the other kids like me." Does the name Musa Tariq mean anything to you, Jim?
No.
Musa Tariq is Apple's new director of social media. Working under Angela Arendt. He worked for her when they were at Burberry together in the same sort of capacity. And he's the new former head. Apple hires Nike's former head of social media, and Mashable says, but why? Like, Mashable, don't you understand what social media means, man?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty freaking obvious why Apple's hired this guy. One of the things is, this is, as we've been saying for at least 2 years now, this is another example of how Tim Cook's Apple is different from Steve Jobs' Apple. Tim Cook has given Angela Arendt, obviously, free reign to hire people. And she's hired a former staff member of hers who did the exact same job, which was directing social media. Apple has never been a very good company when it comes to social media. Yes, Eddie Q has an account, and Phil Schiller has a Twitter account, and Tim Cook tweets and that kind of stuff, but not in any kind of company-wide, big-picture social media, capital S, capital M kind of way. I think that's what Musa Tariq's job is going to be the guy directing Apple social media efforts. When I think that's great. I think Apple should get more involved in social media.
I think that Apple should have hired me to do social media for them.
Too much cursing.
I know, I curse some, yeah.
Yeah, not enough personal hygiene and too much cursing.
All right.
Have you noticed nobody on Apple's board has a beard?
Apple needs more beard.
I think they have the New York Yankees thing that if you're on Apple's board, you're not allowed to have a beard.
I should be on the board.
Oh, you definitely should be on the board. I'll give you that. You definitely should be on the board.
I'd shake things up a little.
Yeah, I think you would. I think you absolutely would. Finally, let's get your thoughts on a question we talked about earlier on the show. The Verge reports Google scans everyone's email for child porn, and it just got a man arrested. What are your thoughts about Google, or anyone else for that matter, scanning your email for, shall we say, illegal activities? Are you okay with that?
Boy, that's a question, isn't it? I mean, it's in that kind of Google scanning your email.
Sorry, Jim, you're breaking up. Could you go back and start over?
Oh, sorry. That's a tough one. One, especially with things like child porn.
Yeah.
But do you really want Google scanning your email? No.
Well, remember, Google already scans your email. That's how they can send you those advertisements that you see next to your email. Yeah. So they're already doing it in an automated fashion. No one's looking at the email. The computer's looking for keywords and AdWords, and they'll throw the ads up. And we don't seem to have much of a problem with that. This seems to be one tiny step down a slippery slope further than that. And again, I want to make clear to everyone, I'm not advocating child porn. I think people who deal with that in any way, shape, or form should be castrated at the very least.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I want to make that clear to everybody. But it's still a slippery slope of people looking at your private matters, even though they may not be private, and then reporting on that to the authorities.
So if you see something, the government should then report that.
Sorry, what was that, Jim?
The government, should they start reporting that?
But you broke up again. Start reporting what? I'm losing you. Have I lost you? Yep, we lost Jim. All right, that's okay. It was perfect timing anyway. Someone text Jim on Twitter and tell him that it was perfect timing. I was dumping his ass anyway. We were talking to Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. He has his own podcast over there at Amplified, 5by5.tv. Do a search for it on the iTunes store. It's called Amplified. You'll find it and subscribe to it and check out what Jim is doing on Amplified. Next up, we're going to talk to Eddie Murphy. Eddie is the photo evangelist for the nice folks over there at Epson, at Epson.com. Check it out at Epson.com. We are going to be talking about printing in general, photo printing specifically, and obviously Epson printers even more specifically. If you have any questions about that or anything else along the lines of printing, please send them to me at Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com or to onair at yourmaclifeshow.com. We'll be on the air with Eddie Murphy in just a moment. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. Thanks very much for joining me. I'm Shawn King. In our phone, we've got our good friend Eddie Murphy from Epson America. Eddie, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm good. Thanks very much for joining us here on the show tonight. Eddie, one of the things that I've been talking about for the last little while on the show is encouraging folks to think more about printing, thinking more about getting those photos off your iPhone, off your Facebook page, even off your Flickr page, and getting them in a physical hard copy. There's something magical about having a print in your hand, the feel of paper. I'm holding up one of my shots now, and there's something about it. Is there any way for you to talk about that? Why does anybody feel that way about a print that we're holding in our hands?
Well, it's more tangible. I mean, it's obviously it's more real. We're tactile people. Looking at it on a phone is one thing. Looking at it on a screen is one thing. But actually being able to show a group of people either a physical print, passing them around, or having a framed print on a wall that's on canvas or a fine art paper, saying, showing it to other people, showing off. I've had a lot of people go, hey, that's a really cool print on your wall. Where'd you buy it? I'm like, well, I bought it myself and I printed it myself. So it's one of those kind of things you can not only share with others, but it's also a physical, tangible thing that they can touch, look at, and see. It's tactile.
Over the years, a lot of us have gotten out of the habit of printing, whether it's because we want to be green, we don't need to print off everything that we see. I think part of it is we have better computer screens to read things off of. So not every email, I remember working at a job where the boss, every single memo had to be printed off for him because he couldn't read or wouldn't read things on screen. Those days are gone. We can read a lot of stuff on screens, and we tend not to print nearly as much. And one of the reasons why is so many of us have either in truth or anecdotally suspicions about inkjet printers. Let's talk a little bit about some of those. And one of the first things I talked to you about when we talked first about a month ago was this issue that people have of inkjet printers drying up. And is that because people leave them for like a month in between printing? Or why do inkjet printers dry up, and how can we fix that issue?
Well, there's a couple of different reasons it happens. Older technology had a rough kind of surface on the actual print head itself. dust could gather on it and it could form a clog. We actually have a brand new ink repelling type coating on our head. It actually looks almost like a mirror. It's super shiny and it resists ink sticking onto it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually kind of cool because the printer it's so hydrophobic on the actual print head itself. Ink doesn't want to get onto it, doesn't want to clog. The other thing is what I see is that the reason heads can clog is people actually don't really take care of their printer in kind of the best way.
Sure,
so
yeah.
That's turning it off when you're not using it, closing it up, covering it. These are 2-3 really, really easy things to do. You do that, and you make sure you don't turn it off at like a power strip. I know a lot of people like to kind of turn off all their devices at a power strip. It keeps your printer running smoothly.
Now, Eddie, explain that for me. I've never heard that before. Why shouldn't I turn it off at the power strip? Why should I turn it off at the power plug?
Well, there's actually a parking mechanism. So, kind of like your hard drive used to park ahead when we actually had hard drives with spinning platters. There's a rubber sealed kind of cap that your print head comes over and it parks it onto when you turn it off from the front panel.
Mm-hmm.
And it forms a hard seal, which kind of keeps the print head from having any kind of drying issues. And if you turn it off at a power strip, it can't go through that shutdown routine and get exposed.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. It's a lot of people get frustrated. Actually, the other thing is leaving it on. I have some friends here, and they leave their printer on all the time. Yeah. And I'm like, turn that off. They're like, why? And I'm like, well, if you don't turn it off, it won't park the head. So it's pretty straightforward, and it just takes 2 seconds, and you save a little bit of power at the same time.
Yeah, I hadn't realized that. I mean, you're right. It makes perfect sense that the print head would need to be parked, and you hear that happening when you print. It moves over a little bit, but what you're saying is that it actually seals itself when you turn the power off at the printer.
Yeah, you have an R2000, so you'll actually be able to hear it when it turns on and turns off. A little kind of it actually raises up the entire carriage and lowers it back down again to seat the print head on that really hard rubber seal, so it actually doesn't have any kind of drying out issues.
One of the other things that a lot of folks get frustrated by is they don't understand the fact that you can't print on the paper you stole from the office. You know, the HP printer that you've got a stack of that you got reams of that paper at the office, and you've got an inkjet at home. You think, well, I'll just grab one of these or grab a few sheets of this and print off 8.5 by 11 at home. Explain to the folks why that doesn't work.
Well, you can print a email on it, but you can't print a photo on it. Mainly, the printers that we sell are mainly photo printers. So the primary print mode is for photo paper. Yeah. So it's going to get the best quality, and you're going to get the best output if you use the right type of paper. We offer so many different kinds of papers, but by default, the papers that it's set for is glossy photo paper. So I get a lot of questions like, why does it take so long? I'm just printing an email. Well, the default paper is glossy photo paper. You can change it to plain paper, but obviously plain paper is for something like an email. Yeah. So, yep.
And you said to me something that I had to call BS on you, and you corrected me, that even on a big fancy printer like the R2000, that you can still print your emails. You can still print black and white text on those printers, and it's cheaper than even a smaller inkjet printer.
Well, it's one of those things where if you have an R2000, you don't necessarily have to go out and buy another printer, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Because that printer will do just fine on emails and text, and the cartridges are, they're obviously larger capacity, so you don't really have to worry about it costing necessarily more or less than a smaller inkjet printer. So
I think it's one of the things a lot of folks don't realize is we just go out and buy these cartridges. We buy them at Staples or a local supply house. We don't realize that they are different sizes. The sizes are so small, we don't think about them that much. But in the larger printers like the R2000, the actual cartridge is, you gave me numbers before, compared to a smaller Epson one. These are 171 milliliters?
These are 17 milliliter cartridges.
Okay, 17 milliliters.
And so it's funny because a lot of the smaller, the all-in-one type printers, the business type printers, they talk about page yields.
Yes.
And we don't talk about page yields at all because you're not printing pages on this printer.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we tell them how much ink it actually uses. And there are a couple of other sites out there that will actually tell you kind of how much ink you'll use on an average photograph. And there are sites out there from third-party paper manufacturers and other paper manufacturers that have actually done these kinds of calculations. If you want, I'll give you a link about those later.
Sure.
And you can actually post them up on your blog.
I said this off the top of the show. In the last 6 months, I've talked to a lot of professional photographers, and I've asked them, all of them, what printer they use to print their photos off of. And to a man, every single one of them says Epson. Epson, I want to say about 15 years ago, and hopefully that was before you were involved with the company, Eddie, Epson had crappy printers, really awful printers. But at some point in, say, 5 to 10 years ago, something happened at Epson. And I don't even know if you can answer this question. But why are Epson printers the choice of professionals?
Actually, I was around 15 years ago.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Actually, it's just about that time that we launched it's funny because actually I started my career at Epson in QA.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually was one of the first people to touch this printer. We launched a printer called the 1270 and the 870. Okay. And they were the first truly, I mean, we had photo printers before that were 6 colors, but these were the first kind of truly photographic printers. Yeah. And I remember starting my job at Epson, I think I was 22 at the time. I was a cocky young kid. I was just like, sure, it's a photo printer. It can print photos. But then I actually looked at the photos that came out of this printer and this new paper, premium glossy paper. I was like, wow, these actually look like photographs. I was expecting to see dots, and I looked really hard. Yep. And then what happened is we got feedback from professional photographers, and they said, hey, this is an amazing printer. It actually prints really well, but these photos are only lasting a couple of years. You need to have long-lasting photos. So then we launched another printer, the 2000P, which is the first photographic pigment printer. And I looked at those prints. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And they're waterproof? That's crazy. And so we just started taking more and more feedback from these professional photographers, which is probably where you kind of say, hey, about 10 years ago, yep, we started kind of transforming the industry. I hate to use kind of a catchphrase like that, but really what we started doing is listening to the professional photographers and saying, hey, what do you want? Yeah. What is it that you really want? And each time we came out with a new generation of printers, the first thing we did was we said, okay, here's what we got. How can we make it better? Yeah. Here's what we got. How can we make it better? And we evolved our printer line, and it got to the point probably about 5 years ago where all the problems were fixed. So then we started figuring out ways, okay, now that we've got all the problems solved, how do we start making the printer even better? And we started coming out with like advanced black and white photo mode. We started coming out with things like orange and green inks and orange and red inks and things like gloss optimizer. And so it's really cool because, actually even better, started coming out with really cool papers like canvas and fine art papers, yeah, and papers that started mirroring photographers were able only to get in traditional darkroom, yeah, photography using chemistry. So it really, that whole period over the past 10 to 15 years came from Epson listening to professional photographers and editors saying, hey, you really need to do this, yeah, or we really need to do this. And actually, one of the printers you're using right now, the R2000, that was part of a research project. We actually went to people's homes and studios. So we went to professional photographers' studios, mm-hmm, and advanced amateur photographers' homes. And I was part of this research team. We actually took engineers from Japan with one of our market research folks, and then somebody from the product management division, went to people's homes and studios, took pictures of where they printed, and we actually asked them to print for us. They got video. They looked, oh, look, this person puts paper on top of their printer case. Yeah, yeah. The printer case flat, so people can put paper on top of it.
That's right.
And they're like, people put no corner, so they're not going to use anything on left or right. So they took all this information And we came out with the R2000 and R3000 printers. Basically, I like to call them the printers that the end user designed. I mean, the customer really designed that printer, the customer and the professional photographer.
Yep.
So, I mean, they're kind of the penultimate of what the photographer, whether they be advanced amateur or professional, wanted.
Talking to Eddie Murphy. Eddie is the digital imaging professional at Epson America. Epson.com is the website. Eddie, one of the questions that people are always going to be asking, that we, depending on who you are, I think for the most part we have a lot of misconceptions about it. It's the quote-unquote high cost of ink for inkjets. And they are pricey little things. I mean, for the 17 millimeter cartridges for the R2000, they're $25 a pop. That's not inexpensive. Justify that price for our audience, would you?
Well, so actually, I love the R2000. That is my favorite example of the printer that really tries to save you money.
Okay.
So as you know, you printed some prints off the R2000.
Yep.
It's got a little bit different of an ink set. It's well, number one, it's pigment based. Most of our professional printers have pigment based inks, which means so. Let me take a step back for a second. Let's do a little side comment.
Please do. I was going to ask the question about pigment and dye anyway, so go right ahead.
Pigment, and I actually have a blog entry on this, so if you want to check it out, that's kind of cool. But pigment inks are physical, solid particles of ink suspended in liquid, in this case, water. And ours are usually coated with some kind of resin, which means they'll bond together to each other once the water is gone away. So think of like charcoal. If you grind up charcoal and you mix it into some water,
yep.
That is black ink, right? Because the color of that liquid is now black.
Okay.
And if you grab a brush and paint it onto a page, you would have black marks on that page.
Sure.
The water would dry away and the pigment would still be there. In our case, we actually coat that pigment with resin, so that resin bonds to itself and that bonds into the actual paper itself, making it super water resistant, super scratch resistant.
Okay.
Dye is colored liquid,
yes.
So it is more of a solution than a suspension. And okay, that's really complicated sounding. Think of dye as like food coloring. Okay. Like if you were making red velvet cupcakes and you poured that whole bottle of red chemically food coloring into the batter or liquid, it dissolves throughout and it stays there. You can't evaporate it out. It doesn't leave any kind of solid particulate. It's kind of completely dissolved into the water, or not even dissolved. It's completely integrated with the water. So to kind of summarize, pigment is like charcoal mixed in water, and dye is like food coloring mixed in water. Now, if you get that food coloring mixed in water onto, like watercolors, if you get that onto a piece of paper and that paper gets wet, it's going to wash away.
Yes, yes.
Because it's water soluble. Yep. Okay, that was pigment versus dye. Now, so pigment inks are great because they'll last longer. And they'll be obviously water resistant, like we just talked about. So that is one benefit of the inks. The next one, and this is an R2000 thing, and you know I've fessed up many times. The R2000 is definitely my favorite printer. The R2000 has two unique inks, red and an orange.
Yeah.
So most printers, if they're a standard photo printer, they have like a magenta, cyan, yellow, and then they have like a light magenta, maybe a light cyan. Some of them have light blacks. And if you want to make red, you have to combine usually light magenta, and yellow. Mm-hmm. That is 3 inks that you have to use. And if you're using the R2000, it just uses red. It's actually one of my favorite things about it. So the other thing is, if you need to produce a true deep red, a lot of times some printers can't produce as true or deep as a red as you actually want. The R2000 is great insofar as this is concerned because it can actually do great reds. I found out at New York Comic Con one year, and I printed Thor's cape, and it was just super deep red, as red as the actual comic itself. Not that I was printing copyrighted material, but what was the one thing was the 3000 is another type of printer that we use. And we use a vivid magenta ink in that printer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit different than a standard magenta. So it gives you more colorant per droplet.
Okay.
So that's another reason that we're actually, even though it uses ink to paint the page, because there's so much pigment per droplet, it doesn't have to use as much ink to paint the same kind of color on the page.
Okay.
So definitely.
I know I'm really impressed with the, for those folks who are watching the video or have watched the video in the past, the prints I've got on the wall behind me that I put up just for visual interest. These are all from the Epson R2000 that I'm reviewing for Epson. And I'm really, really impressed with how well these things come out. The problem is, and Eddie knows this because we've talked about this before, is it seems that the actual printing stuff can be a black art in the sense that if you get it right the first time, it's great. It looks fantastic, but it can be awfully frustrating for a beginner to print things off at the size they want. A lot of us, and I made the same mistake, we take photos with our iPhone and assume, therefore, we can print that off on a 13 by 19 page. That's not necessarily true. You have to do a little bit of work to print off well, don't you? It's not something you can just do, take the print out of a box, put your iPhone picture on there, and boom, you're a happy camper, right?
Not so much, no. There is math involved, though. Although Photoshop will do the math for you, as most common image printing programs like iPhoto or QImage.
Lightroom will too, as I've since found out.
That's right. You're a Lightroom fan. That's right.
Yep.
So I mean, generally the rule of thumb, and so this is kind of the kind of industry standard. I'll give you the Epson version of this in a second. The rule of thumb is 300 pixels per inch, and yes, I said pixels, not dots. Yep. Dots are on a page. Pixels are on your screen. And there's two little camps in the digital imaging industry about that. But 300 pixels per inch at final print resolution. What does that mean? That means if you have an image that you that you screen captured off of your high def monitor, right?
Yes.
It's only 1920 by 1080, right? Something like that. At 72 pixels per inch. So you're going to get a much smaller image. You might be able to print that maybe 5 by 7, 8 by 10. Yeah. If you do the whole 300 pixels per inch rule. Yeah. What I like to do is generally for higher end Epson printers, we actually up that. We actually up that to 360 pixels per inch. Okay. You can actually go though as low on like an R2000 or R3000 as low as 180 pixels per inch. And generally, I like to kind of go in magic numbers. So 180, 270, which is 180 plus 90. Add another 90, and you get to 360. Okay. Anything over 360 is just excessive. Overkill. You don't need. Yeah. And then the trick. Here's the other trick: is if you're going under 180, the bigger your print and the farther away your person is from viewing it, the lower resolution you can go. I generally don't say you can go under 150. Generally, humans have survived in the world because we have big brains, not great eyes. If you have a print on a wall and it's 13 by 19, or let's just say 12 by 18, and you've matted and framed it, and people are looking at that print maybe 3 to 5 feet away, it can be 150 pixels per inch. It doesn't matter because humans have crappy vision. Now, if you're printing out 4 by 6s and you try and print that at 150 pixels per inch, people will see it's crappy right away because they're gonna hold that up to their nose. Yeah. And they're gonna look at it really close because they're like, oh, look at this, look at so and so's, new dog, and I mean, they'll see warts and all. Yeah. But you're right. You need to do a little bit of Instagram. Do you use Instagram?
No, I do not.
So Instagram used to have a bunch of preset filters into it. Yep. And just recently, they've added a bunch of color controls. So I think they kind of realized that all the default filters that are built into the program don't necessarily fix people's photos in the way they do, but they want. So they added contrast, brightness, sharpness, saturation, tint, and warmth and coolness controls so people can edit their photos. Sure. And I crank all those freaking sometimes I crank saturation, sometimes I desaturate it, sometimes. I mean, the idea is that the image, even if it's off of a high resolution camera phone like a Samsung Galaxy or something like that, it's still not going to be a perfect shot right away. So you'll need to do a little bit of finagling with it. The same thing goes for, print out of a camera. There used to be this technology called PictBridge where you could actually print directly from a digital SLR camera or a higher end camera straight into a printer. And we actually have it on the R3000 and R2000. And it's one of those things where if you're going to print a 13x19 print, you're going to do some editing to it beforehand. You're not going to print it straight off your camera.
Sure, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
I get asked on occasion, why don't my printers have card slots?
Yeah, I mean that's a fair question because some of the competitor ones do.
Well, and the way I usually respond is that I don't take perfect pictures right away. Why would I want to try and print something off of my high-end printer, without editing it first?
That's exactly what I tell everybody. I tell people that every single photo that you see in any magazine, Time or Vogue, whatever it is, they need some sort of post-processing. You don't want to print your photos directly off a card because maybe you want to crop the photo. Maybe you want to saturate it. A lot of cameras don't have a very good color reproduction, so you need to bring it into iPhoto or Photoshop or Lightroom or that kind of thing to boost the saturation or to bring out the shadows and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I would never print something directly off a camera card. Now, now the thing is though, we take stuff directly off our iPhone and post it to Facebook or Twitter all the time. It's not the same thing. It's a whole different beast when you're talking about printing this stuff off.
I can't tell you how many times I've actually downloaded friends' photos that were completely not quite like they were in the foreground and the background was lit properly and the foreground was completely dark.
Yep.
I'd download their photo, I'd fix it, and I'd re-upload it again. I'm like, there, I fixed your photo.
It was just annoying me.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing goes for a print. And it's not, I think people get kind of intimidated by when you say photo editing.
Yep, I agree.
Photo editing and printing is not as hard as you think. Yep. And I'm sure you've given a bunch of people tips on how to like lighten the foreground or to do a little sharpening or a little color correction. And the same thing goes for the printer. You don't have to know a lot of the complex controls that are available in the printer for that are there for professionals. Most of the time when I print a photo, I've got a good source file. And what I do is I print using the automatic mode.
Yeah.
And I kind of show that off at trade shows. Yeah. And people say, hey, why don't my prints look as good as yours? I'm like, well, number one, I'm starting with a good source file. Not saying that your source files aren't good. But, I'm starting with a good source file. And number two, I know what mode I want to print that in. So if it's something like I shoot it in Adobe RGB, and I know there's a lot of really rich saturated color, there's an Adobe RGB mode in the printer. And I just choose the Adobe RGB mode. It's really easy. People get really stunned at how not hard it is.
We get a question via email from Michelle's Jang. Michelle says she has 2 small children. She often takes pictures of the kids. What's the recommended photo printer for a family who's only going to print, say, 5 to 10 photos a month? What Epson printer would you recommend for them?
I would probably go with one of the Expression series printers. I think we have an Expression XP810, which is a 5-color photo printer, and we also have an Expression XP850 or 60. I'm not quite sure which the number is, but they're all-in-ones. They're actually small, compact all-in-ones. Yep. They're 5 or 6 color printers, and they print great photos really fast, and they'll last for a really long time. Mm-hmm. Now, you'll want to make sure you're printing them on good paper, like our premium glossy photo paper. Or I'm kind of a fan of the premium semi-gloss because it gives you that matte photo look. Like you'd pay really expensive for when you did it with the studios.
Sure. Yeah.
When you get school pictures.
Yep,
yeah.
That's right.
The semi-gloss is nice. I like it a lot. If you're interested in doing something like scrapbooking and you wanted to be able to print 12 by 12, maybe what you could do is you could actually have a scrapping party if you're a scrapbooker, and if you're a scrapper, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. you can actually have a scrapping party. You can actually have a bunch of friends go in. You all print your photos at once. You print your 12 by 12 backgrounds on the R2000.
Yep.
And you actually do it all together as a group. And then you kind of all share costs of ink, paper, and printer. So it's kind of a group printer. And, you know, you guys all get together anyway and hang out.
Yeah.
You do the fun stuff. And one of the things I like to do is I like to use canvas as a background.
Yeah.
So I'll print like a 13 by 13 canvas of like a hike that I've been on, and I'll just print that and use that as the background. So if it's something like a family and it's your first vacation, you know, you take the canvas, you print that as a background, you get that framed, and then you print out a couple of 4x6s or 3x5s, or you actually just you print your 4x6s and then you crop them out, you know, using a die cut.
Yeah.
And then you put those onto the actual canvas themselves, throw on like a leaf or a rock from the trip. And hey, it's not just a picture. It's suddenly a shadow box memory. And suppose you give that to grandma. Yeah. That's going to be irreplaceable. I mean, seriously, that's going to be a memory that nobody can actually ever give anyone. So.
Got a question in our IRC chat room from our friend Monty. Ask him if they've done any fade tests between their inkjet printer printed images and traditional photographic C41 process printed images. I have no idea what he's talking about.
I don't know what the C41 process is, but if he's talking about standard wet chemistry, which is silver halide, which if you are interested in, silver halide generally has about a light fastness of anywhere from 30 to I think 40, maybe 50 years.
Okay.
If you're using the R2000, you have a light fast rating. That's fade test, and this is done by an independent organization. So this is fade tests of up to 108 years in a frame. That's getting, I think, 450 lux at 8 hours a day. If you want, we can send you a link to the specifics of the test. 108 years before it starts to noticeably fade on premium glossy photo paper, and it's up to 300 years in an album on premium glossy photo paper. Wow. So that's I mean, people are like, if it's over 50 years, I'm good.
That's right.
So.
I'm long dead by then. Who cares?
Well, the other advantage to the R2000 or the R3000 as far as pigmenting goes is that it's waterproof too. Yeah. So, I mean, it's water resistant. You can actually get the prints wet. And I do something that's a little – and you know what? I will show this to you at SIGGRAPH.
Okay.
There is a kind of a fun ShamWow type demo that I do where I have printed out a picture on one of our glossy papers, either a luster glossy or semi-gloss paper. Yep. On the R2000 or R3000, then I actually pour water onto it, and then I rub it with my fingers until it actually squeaks.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's pretty fun. I call it my test, and it's fun. It's cool, and it shows how resistant to water, how resistant to smudging the prints are, and they last.
One of the other things that you and I talked about that I thought was really interesting, especially your explanation. In my photo classes, I talked to folks about the idea of the screen versus seeing things off of paper, projected light versus reflected light. And one of the reasons why we see things on our computer screens differently than we see them on the light off of a leaf or off a tree is because that's reflected light versus projected light. I didn't think about this, and you did a great explanation. It's the same thing with printing, isn't there? There's a difference, and you have to know what the difference is. And you had a great way of describing it, pleasing print versus accurate print. Give me that description again.
So a couple things. That's I think we're talking about pleasing print versus accurate print. We'll get to in a second. But the first one was your screen is a light bulb. Yeah. Or it's actually a really, really bright LED nowadays if you're using one of the newer monitors. And I've seen this time and again where I get a new computer or a new monitor and I open it up, turn it on for the first time, and then I turn my brightness down to 50% because the thing's blindingly bright. Because it's too bright. These monitors are designed to be bright, have a super high contrast ratio. It looks great when you're watching a movie or a video or something like that on Netflix or Hulu or whatever streaming service you use. And it looks amazing. Yep. Really high contrast ratio, looks super vibrant, super saturated. But if you print something, your print can only reflect what light is reflected off of it. Yeah. So have your monitor set to 100% brightness, and then you look at your print, and all you have is your den lighting. And you go, why is my print so dark compared to my
right.
monitor? I'm like, because your monitor is a giant light bulb.
That's right.
And so the first thing I usually do is I turn the brightness down on my monitor probably about to 50%. Actually, mine's about 40% right now on my MacBook, and it's perfect brightness level. The other thing I do is when I'm looking at my prints, I look at it under a light. I mean, it's what it's designed. I mean, you need to give that print some light to be able to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And you should get a very close approximation to your monitor, provided there's nothing bizarro going on with your monitor. It's not going to be exact. There are ways to get it exact.
Yes.
And this is where we go into accurate color versus pleasing prints.
Yeah.
So I actually I studied under one of the 10 top color scientists in the country. He's brilliant, and he taught me a lot of stuff about color science. And I can give you a completely accurate print.
Yeah.
The problem is I can also give you a completely accurate print. I get this from folks all the time at a trade show. They're like, well, why doesn't my print look good? I've got color management. I've profiled my monitor. I'm using ICC profiles on my printer. So this whole color managed workflow and color management. And the first question I ask them is, well, do you want an accurate print or do you want a pleasing photo? And look at me for a second.
That's right.
And they go, well, aren't they the same thing? And I'm like, no, accurate color is accurate.
Yep.
It will show you your print, warts and all. Not saying that people necessarily have a bad print or a bad image, but there are things that you may not have taken into consideration. And I'm going to use a big word, colorimetrically, or yes. That could come to bear when you actually print it out.
Yeah.
There may be colors that your printer can't print. There may be colors that you remember seeing, but your camera couldn't capture. We call those memory colors, like sky blue, the red of an apple, grass green.
Yeah.
Most printers can print nowadays, but sometimes they're just a little bit too vibrant, and you may remember something that's a little bit more vibrant than the sensor on your camera could have captured, or and maybe your sensor on your camera could capture it. Maybe your monitor can show it, but maybe your printer just can't print it because it doesn't have that light bulb capability. So what I like to do is I like to tell people, hey, you know what? There is a built-in mode, and I think I mentioned this earlier. The automatic mode in the driver prints great.
Yeah.
I use it most of the time, and in fact, it's one of the things that I do. It's one of the first troubleshooting things that I tell people to try when they're saying, "Hey, my print doesn't look so great." I'm like, "Are you using color?" Yeah, I'm using color management. I'm like, try using the automatic mode. Really? Yeah, the automatic.
That's the first thing you told me too.
Exactly. Well, a lot of people have Adobe RGB built into their camera. If not, it's probably defaulted to sRGB, and sRGB is not bad. No matter what you may think, it's just a little bit different.
Yep.
And if you tell the printer, hey, I'm printing with the standard sRGB mode, or that's the way my camera captured it, or hey, my camera captured this in Adobe RGB mode, and you select those settings in the driver, the printer will give you a very pleasing looking print, provided your image is okay. So
that's always the assumption, provided that you've already got a good image. The other thing, and I haven't had a chance to test this out that's what I'm going to be doing this week, testing the R2000. The idea that I can print on different media too, which I think is really fascinating to me. We think of printing, I'm just going to take a piece of paper, put it in a printer, and out comes a printed piece of paper. But there's different media I can print on now with some of these newer printers. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, and I've already talked about this before. It's my favorite paper is canvas.
Yeah, and people don't think of canvas as being quote unquote paper.
Guess technically you're right.
Yeah.
It's actually not paper. It's 65% polyester, 35% cotton. It's actually a woven canvas. It's not some simulated canvas. It is woven canvas, and we have 5 types that will work in the R2000. 3 are my favorite, and the 3 that really, really work well in the R2000 are the Exhibition Canvas Natural Gloss. Exhibition Canvas Natural Gloss Exhibition Canvas Matte and Exhibition Canvas Natural Matte.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my favorite ones. So I think they're great. They're relatively inexpensive. The Exhibition Canvas Matte, I think, in the U.S. goes for $35 for a 20-foot roll.
Yeah.
And then there are these cool stretching kits. I'm not really fond of the stretching kits, but I think some people like them. But you can also just matte and frame it. I love canvas. We also have fine art papers, 100% cotton papers with varying or smooth textures. And we also have, the printer will also print on CDs and DVDs, but we also make different types of glossy paper. So we, like I mentioned before, we have a luster, we have a semi-matte, and we have a semi-gloss, and we have a glossy paper.
Folks, you can go to the website at Epson.com. I've been talking to Eddie Murphy. He's the digital imaging professional at Epson America. I could keep talking to you, Eddie, all night long, learning with this stuff. This stuff fascinates me. If you want more information, again, go to Epson.com. But also, check out Off the Beaten Print. Eddie has his own blog, and I'm really hoping, Eddie, you print off, you post up a lot more stuff. And you've got snickerdoodle recipes. You can't beat a blog that's got snickerdoodle recipes.
I do. I like to bake. So, but yeah, actually that's a funny story. That story, if you look at it's epson.com/community/offbeat, yep. I was so happy with that URL. If you look at that story about the snickerdoodles, that is actually how it happened. I spared the audience some of the really, really bad looking snickerdoodle pictures, but you get the idea if you read that. And as you suggested, I'm actually just getting ready to write an entire series of pretty much things that you're afraid to ask, but you really, really, really wanted to know about printing.
Fantastic.
So, I mean, it's one of those things that you were mentioning. It would be really great if somebody could just tell me directly, these are the 3 things that I need to do right away. Exactly. And I'm like, that's a great idea.
Yep.
Love it.
Yeah, we've been talking about that for a while. So keep an eye on Off the Beaten Print, as Eddie said, epson.com/community/offbeat, or just do a search for Eddie Murphy. The other thing you can do is follow Eddie on Twitter and see all his bulkhead pictures. What the hell's wrong with you? I've seen a lot of odd pictures on Twitter. Eddie posts whenever he gets bulkhead on because Eddie travels all over the place. He loves getting how tall are you, Eddie?
6 feet tall.
Yeah, so I'm 6'3". So us tall guys love bulkhead. I've never seen anyone post as many bulkhead pictures as you have, though. Eddie Murphy, Eddie_Murphy on Twitter, if you want to follow him there. I'm going to be seeing Eddie again next week here in Vancouver at SIGGRAPH. Looking forward to seeing what you guys are going to be showing off there. But stay tuned to the blog and to Eddie's Twitter feed. We've got 1,000 more questions I could ask him. If you have any more questions, send them to me, Shawn, at yourmaclifeshow.com, or directly to Eddie over on Twitter, Eddie_Murphy on Twitter. Eddie, thanks very much for doing this. I kept you a lot longer than I expected. I really appreciate it. And by the way, Stephanie Johnson, all the folks at Walton Company are listening. I hope Eddie and I did a good enough job for you guys.
Really quickly, Shawn, I just want to direct them to actually, instead of tweeting to me, tweet to the Epson America account.
Okay.
That's the best way to go.
Epson America, at Epson America is the best place to do it. All right, not a problem. Epson America. I just want to make sure I get it. I'm going to follow Epson America too. Eddie, thanks very much, buddy. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
Much appreciated, Shawn.
You have a good night.
Take care.
See ya. Is that it? I've returned him down. Thank you very much. I just looked up at the clock and realized we've been with Eddie for 45 minutes. I wasn't anticipating to spend that much time with him, but there's printing that you do just regular. You've got a cheap old printer that's almost disposable. But then when you want to print off good stuff, and I saw folks, both Sly and I think Hiker also said they print stuff off at London Drugs, and that's fine. We didn't even get into that conversation with Eddie. It turns out that depending on the size, it's cheaper to print at home on one of these R2000 type printers than it would be to send things out to London Drugs. If you do it right the first time, that's the issue. This strawberry picture that I've got up here on my wall cost about $5 off the R2000. It would cost you between $10 and $20 at London Drugs, the same size. If I had to print this thing off 5 times, though, to get it right, then obviously it's cheaper to do it at London Drugs. The R2000 is not the printer for printing off your kids' doodles, but it's a professional photo printer. But Epson does make a lot of really good home inkjet printers. If you, as Eddie said, if you take care of, excuse me, if you take care of them and understand what they're going to do, you can get some really nice prints off of Epson stuff. So Epson America is the Twitter account. Epson.com is the website. And thanks again very much for Eddie Murphy of Epson and also Stephanie Jack Johnson of Walt & Company for arranging Eddie being on the show. I don't have time. Okay, no, let's give away. Thanks very much to the nice folks at MacFun, macfun.com, MacPhun, macfun.com. Those are the guys who were nice enough to give us a copy of the really neat Tonality app, as they call it, the world's most complete black and white photo editor. I love, especially now that I've got the R2000 I've been testing out. This is what I'm going to be doing this week is testing out black and white photos. You can't just take a black and white photo in color photo in iPhoto, hit the black and white button and expect a good picture. It might come out, but most likely it's not going to. You need to tweak your black and white, just like you need to tweak your color shots. And Tonality from MacFun is a way of doing that. You get some really neat presets in it. One of my other favorite apps, Snapseed on the iPhone, on the iPad, can also do this. I'm going to have a lot of fun playing around with Tonality. So if you are a subscriber to Your Mac Life, or if you have filled out the entry form that's found on the top of the YourMacLifeShow.com website, you will be entered into our draw for a copy of Tonality. I'm going to draw that on tonight's show. Let me find my list of subscriptions. There we go. Subs. And turn this on. Boom. Oh, okay. So I'm going to do a random draw. Someone in the IRC chat room is going to say, oh, Brian Monroe is in there saying stop early. So if someone else in the IRC say stop, and I will draw the name randomly from the file. Waiting for IRC. Sherry says stop. I'm going to go to Jervis Thompson. Jervis, congratulations. You have won a copy of Tonality from the nice folks at MacFun. MacFun. Again, that's MacPhun. I use their Snap Heel all the time and have been using the other stuff for a while too. So please check it out at macfun.com. Monty says the folks who managed the MacFun booth at Macworld were really nice people. I've never met any of them. I think they've only been around for I think maybe 5 years. I can't remember meeting any of the MacFun folks. I know I love their software. Let's see, anything else in the IRC chat? Oh, the other thing is about printing is the more printer cartridges, the better. Yes, they're more expensive, especially if you're paying $25 a pop. But if you have more printer cartridges, you can get a wider range of colors. That was something someone emailed me about. If you've got a printer that's only got 3 colors, RGB, red, green, black, red, green, brown, red, green, blue, red, green, blue. It has to mash together a bunch of other colors in order to get anything outside of that range. Black and white and purple and pink and that kind of stuff. That's why you'll see some printers have what's called CMYK, cyan, yellow, magenta, and K for black. The Epson R2000 printer has got 8 cartridges, including a gloss optimizer and I think 2 different kinds of black. So you're getting a much broader range, or what they call in the photography or in the graphic design business, gamut of colors, a much wider range of colors. So the more ink cartridges you have, the broader range of colors you'll be able to print, and you'll use up your cartridges slower because you're not using up all your red, green, and blue to make black. You'll have a black cartridge. You're not using up all your CYMK to print peach. You'll have more specific colors. So Sherry says, weren't there 2 black cartridges? Yeah, there's 2 black cartridges in that one, and I don't know whether it's a gray, a dark gray, a black. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, there are two colors, which is really kind of cool. I think let me check my email real quick to see if there's anything else. Nothing else. I want to say thanks very much to Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com, even if he wouldn't answer my damn question. Also, thanks to Eddie Murphy at Epson. If you have any questions for Eddie that I didn't get to, or you want further information, send me an email to Shawn at YourMacLifeShow.com, and I'll pass that email on to Eddie, or contact the folks at Epson America on their Twitter account, twitter.com /Epson America is the place to ask questions if you'd like. That's it, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining us, whether you're listening in live to the show tonight in the IRC chat room, on our Google Hangouts, via YouTube, or if you tuned into the archive. Thank you all very much for joining us and being involved in this here show. Until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!